What does a hero do when the world no longer needs heroes? What happens to a great warrior who was born to fight? This is the story of Don John of Austria, the last great crusader. He was a man who achieved a victory so monumental, it felt like a legend from a bygone age, only to discover that the world he had just saved had already moved on without him. In this video, we will tell the sad, glorious, and forgotten story of a man born in the wrong century, a hero whose greatest triumph became the monument to his own obsolescence. Part 1. The Bastard Prince. To understand Don John, we must understand his origin. He was the illegitimate son of the most powerful man in the world, the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V. He grew up knowing he had the blood of emperors in his veins, but without a clear title or inheritance. This created a burning desire within him to prove his worth not through politics or intrigue, but through the purest, most noble way he knew: chivalrous deeds and glorious combat. He was raised on the stories of El Cid, of Richard the Lionheart, and the great Crusades. He didn't just admire these legends, he believed it was his destiny to become one. His charisma was magnetic, his skill in arms was undeniable, and his devotion to the Catholic faith was absolute. He was the perfect embodiment of the Crusader ideal, a prince forged for a holy war. The only problem was the age of holy wars was all but over. Part 2. The Dream of a Crusade. By the mid-16th century, the great powers of Europe were more concerned with colonial expansion trade routes and their own political squabbles than with religious crusades. But one threat still loomed large in the Mediterranean: the seemingly invincible Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman navy dominated the sea-raiding coastlines and threatening to push further into Europe. In a moment of crisis, Pope Pius V managed to do the impossible. He united the squabbling Christian powers of Spain, Venice, and the Papal States into a holy league. It was a crusade, one last great effort to halt the Ottoman advance. And to lead this holy fleet, they chose the young, charismatic, and zealous Don John of Austria. For him, this was not just a military command. It was the fulfillment of his life's purpose. It was his chance to become the hero he had always dreamed of being. He would lead Christendom into one final glorious battle against its greatest foe. Part 3. The Glory of Lepanto, 1571. The Battle of Lepanto was one of the largest and most decisive naval battles in history. It was a brutal, bloody clash between hundreds of galleys, a throwback to an older form of warfare fought with cannons, arquebuses, but also with swords and axes in brutal hand-to-hand combat as ships rammed and boarded each other. At the heart of it all was Don John. He was not a distant admiral. He was a true knight commander leading from his flagship, the Real. He sailed into the thick of the fighting, a crucifix held high, inspiring his men with religious fervor. He was a beacon of chivalrous courage, a warrior prince torn from the pages of a romance novel. The battle was a slaughter. The Holy League, under Don John's charismatic leadership, achieved a stunning, overwhelming victory. The Ottoman fleet was shattered. The myth of their invincibility at sea was broken. News of the victory spread across Europe like wildfire. Church bells rang, celebrations erupted, and Don John of Austria was hailed as the savior of Christendom. He was the new hero of a new crusade. It was the absolute peak of his life. But the world he had just saved was about to betray him. He had won a great medieval victory, but he was living in an emerging modern world, a world that had no place for a hero like him. Part 4. The Hero Without a War. Lepanto was his crowning achievement. Don John was the most famous man in Europe, a living legend. He dreamed of using this victory as a springboard for a grand new crusade to reconquer Constantinople and even Jerusalem. But the world had other plans. The fragile alliance of the Holy League fell apart almost immediately. The Venetians, concerned with their trade routes, made a separate peace with the Ottomans. The Spanish king, his own half-brother Philip II, was more worried about Protestant rebellions in the Netherlands than holy wars in the East. The political and economic realities of the modern state quickly overshadowed the romantic ideal of a crusade. Don John was left with his grand ambitions, but no war to fight. He was a hero without a purpose. In a move that sealed his tragic fate, King Philip sent him to govern the Spanish Netherlands, a region mired in a brutal, complicated rebellion. This was not a chivalrous war. It was a quagmire of brutal sieges, religious persecution, and complex political negotiations. Don John, the heroic Crusader, was forced to become a politician and an administrator, a role he was ill-suited for and deeply despised. He wrote desperate letters begging to be allowed to lead new campaigns, to chase new glories, but his pleas were ignored. The world wanted governors and bureaucrats, not crusading heroes. He died just a few years later at the age of 31, likely from typhus, in a dreary military camp in the Netherlands. The great savior of Christendom died not in a glorious battle, but of disease. His dreams shattered, a man made obsolete by his own great victory. The tragedy of Don John of Austria is the tragedy of a man born out of time. He perfectly embodied the virtues of a bygone era: piety, courage, and a belief in glorious holy war. He achieved a victory so complete it seemed to justify that entire worldview. But he couldn't stop the march of history. He was a knight in a world of politics, a crusader in an age of commerce, a hero in a time that valued governors more than warriors. He wasn't defeated by an enemy in battle, but by the quiet, relentless force of a changing world. His life was the last brilliant flash of a setting sun, the final glorious echo of the crusading ideal, before it faded into history. This story of a man out of time is a crucial part of understanding the knight's decline. If you were moved by his tragic tale, show your support by hitting the like button. And to see how the very idea of the knight was finally laid to rest, subscribe to the Knight's Journey and ring the notification bell for the final episodes of our series. Because sometimes a hero's greatest tragedy isn't losing a battle. It's winning one only to realize the world no longer cares.